man, there's all these identities. I'm Angelo the person, I'm Angelo the husband, I'm Angelo the father, I'm Angelo the businessman. And how do I win in all of them, right? Mm-hmm. Where I think a lot of our 20th century men focused on winning in business and felt like if they brought home enough money and they provided, that would make up for lack of emotional intimacy with their partners and their children, lack of communication, right? Dad just sat on the recliner and you had to watch whatever dad wanted to watch on TV.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover Podcast, the show about the art of crushing your goals and the discipline of loving your life while you do. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Sharing this podcast with friends is the best way to ensure we can keep making them and bring on more and more interesting guests. Very few people embody their business as well as today's guest. Angelo Sisco is the owner of Alpha Hippie Coaching and hosts the Alpha Hippie Podcast. He truly walks the path of using his strength and success to spread kindness and understanding. In this conversation, Angelo digs deep into how an imperfect history can be overcome with love, friendship, and a willingness to look in the mirror. Please welcome Angelo Sisco. Go, Angelo. How you doing, brother?
Dude, I'm absolutely amazing. So grateful to be here, King.
Dude, I'm excited to talk to you. We've only spoken very briefly a couple of different times, but we've lived a somewhat parallel existence over the last, couple dozen years. So I'm really excited to dig in. Angelo is the owner of Alpha Hippie, which is coaching and podcast and all sorts of stuff I'm sure we'll talk about today, as well as a new podcast you're starting called the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm going to be the co-host of the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast with Scott Ramage. Super pumped.
Oh, that's exciting, man. So tell us a little bit about Alpha Hippie as well as Brotherhood of Fatherhood.
Sure. So Alpha Hippie originally started as not a joke, should I say, but it was the name that I gave myself during my intentional self-development journey, I guess you could say. I grew up in Chicago. I live in SoCal now. So when I say home, I mean Chicago. I was coming out to Southern California since about 2015 in the Encinitas area and things around that area, and really doing a lot of different kinds of retreats and mind, expanding things and stuff like that. And I came home to O'Hare CrossFit and I was talking with one of my members who I known a long time about this different kind of meditation I was doing. I was starting to be barefoot more. People were like looking at me a little bit kind of hippie-ish. And one of the guys made a joke and I said, man, you don't know shit about this because you're not an alpha hippie. And I was like, man, what a cool name for what I would really like to embody as a man, is having enough courage and assertiveness to be an alpha, and also too, to have enough compassion, empathy, and love, and being proud of showing that and being very, I don't want to say emotional, but in tune with my emotions, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm not emotional in like an outburst sense, but in a way that I wasn't afraid to be with my emotions and talk about them and things like that, where some alphas may shun them out. And I say, you don't know shit about this because you're not an alpha hippie. And I was like, man, what a cool idea, alpha hippie. So I go online and I was like, man, someone's had made a shirt that said alpha hippie by now. And I look on there and I couldn't find any shirts, Jason. So I said, screw it. I drew my own design and I sent it to someone on Fiverr and had to make a file for me, all that little fancy stuff. And then because I had the gym at the time, I didn't want to just print out one shirt. I printed out 100 shirts of this original logo. And I would send it to all of my friends and I would go on these retreats, even like in Costa Rica. I lived in an eco village for a week and I would bring bags of these shirts and bring them to people and they would wear them. And I would ask them just to tag me on Instagram wearing it and write out what the Alpha Hippie meant to them. And then from there, I was like, man, this is such a great concept. People are starting to understand this vibe of being an Alpha Hippie. And I then started the podcast. And the podcast is around 270 episodes right now up to this date. And I launched that in 2017. And that was just a way for me to continue my growth and my learning without necessarily having to leave Chicago all the time. Because for me, I just didn't see a big enough community or didn't know of a big enough community that wanted to talk about these more expansive concepts and stuff like that, and psychology and mindset and all that stuff. And so by doing the podcast, that felt really great and a way to continue my learning and growth. And then I launched the first men's program at the end of 2017, Alpha Hippie Masculine Mastery, and that's still the name of our program. And obviously it's been tweaked and transitioned months from when I started, but I just was doing it with some guys at the gym that were into this stuff, and we were having conversations about it and becoming more open with, our mindset and our spirituality and our emotions and things like that. And so I created that program. And then I had my son in 2019. And the reason I bring this up is 2 days before he was born, I had this really strong calling or epiphany, if you will, and realized that the identity of being a CrossFit gym owner was not the identity that I knew that I wanted to be in any longer. And I had a CrossFit journey of around 12 years of being a CrossFit coach and all that good stuff. And I just felt like I did it. Like I coached people to the games. I opened up more gyms. I did in the business coaching. I really felt like I checked every box of someone that owned a CrossFit gym. I just didn't have anything more to keep going or trick myself into wanting to go and achieve. And I really felt like Alpha Hippie was the next step for me. And 2 days later, my son Santi was born. And I told my wife a month later that, Alpha Hippie was going to be where I'm stepping towards. And I wanted her support. And I also let her know that because of me removing myself from my brick and mortar gym and doing all that now we had an opportunity to really change our geography if we wanted to. And she was really supportive of that. And so we sold the gym. It was pre-COVID. I had this all figured out. But when COVID came, the plans didn't change, just the house changed. And I moved out to Southern California, June of 2020, and just totally stepped into men's work and working with men with Alpha Hippie. And then I met Scott Ramage and Josh Price, who are the founders of Brotherhood of Fatherhood. And they have a wonderful podcast, great network of people. They also had some ties in the CrossFit space. So we, when me and you first got on the phone, it's like kindred spirits. It's like we all went to the same high school. You know what I mean? That's what I feel like anyone that's kind of progressed or came through that 2010s of being in CrossFit, especially the people that were pre-Reebok. If anyone, you know what I mean? Like when you see anyone that's pre-Reebok and you remember working out in Chucks and stuff like that, you're like, yeah, okay, I know you were definitely when I started CrossFit.
Five finger toe shoes.
Yeah, the 5 fingers and the New Balance Minimus.
And what are the
Chucks.
British ones? The Innovates. I got Innovates too. Yeah.
Those were the original CrossFit shoes. Sorry, guys. Reebok came along way after for all of us. We were ripping those up long before. And I still remember what it felt like to do box jumps in the Vibrams. They changed my mind right away about those damn Vibrams. They're not made to do much jumping in.
No.
But anyways, and so I connected with them, and they have a wonderful podcast, and they're focusing on fathers, and especially me being a young father, it's an area that I'm very passionate about. And they were not offering any sort of coaching and course, and they were looking also for co-hosts for their show. And so I stepped in, and we're about to just release our first shows of Brotherhood of Fatherhood, and really focusing on what it's like to be this 21st century man there's all these identities. I'm Angelo the person, I'm Angelo the husband, I'm Angelo the father, I'm Angelo the businessman. And how do I win in all of them, right? Mm-hmm. Where I think a lot of our 20th century men focused on winning in business and felt like if they brought home enough money and they provided, that would make up for lack of emotional intimacy with their partners and their children, lack of communication, right? Dad just sat on the recliner and you had to watch whatever dad wanted to watch on TV. I laugh at my wife all the time. I'm watching Corey Carson on Netflix with my son. I go, when I was 4, I was just watching The Godfather because that's what my dad had on. I couldn't say anything, right? It's just such a different world. And I really wanted to bring a lot of coaching and education to men that way, because the 21st century man, we try to do it all. And I think it's such a big undertaking that we all put on ourselves from a pressure standpoint, that we try to make as much money as the predecessors did, or possibly more. And we try to be emotionally available in all these things. And I think that right now, men need to come together and have support for each other, because like it or not, we're all here on this earth together. And the things that we all want are pretty much, all of us have the same wants, needs. We all want to feel safe. We want to be physically free, financially free, all the freedoms. And so the more we could come together collectively, we're going to do that. And that's what we're hoping to achieve with Brotherhood of Fatherhood.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, there's very few people that you meet where, whatever they're affiliated with, their branding, their logo, their company more like perfectly matches them.
Yep.
I think I'm working towards that. But man, when I got on the phone with you, it was like I was talking to, this alpha guy, but immediately it's like I'm getting a warm hug. And even just listening to you talk right now, like there's so much compassion and like care that comes through, as well as kind of the mixture of your strength. I wonder if, without being too reductionist, were you alpha then hippie, or were you hippie then alpha, or did it kind of come together?
Because I do feel turn into hippie
exactly,
later,
because it takes strength to be kind, right? Like, does that make sense?
No, 1000%. I grew up, my father was in prison for 11 years from when I was 5 till I was 16. And just saying that my father was in prison for 11 years, you can only imagine the type of man that people don't get 11 years for not paying parking tickets, everyone. Okay.
Sure.
And so you could only imagine what like my model of a father was, this big, strong man. My father's name is Gaetano, but for short, you call him Guy. So my dad's name was Guy. Could you just imagine that your dad is this 400-pound, my dad was 400 pounds when he went to prison, this 400-pound, 6'1", massive man named Guy, and just how he showed up in my life. And so I was very much alpha. I really believe that when I was growing up, like Gordon Gekko, that was the only way you were going to win in business, was to be this monster. And it took me a long time to embrace my feelings and my emotion side and things like that. And I have to say, though, I am so grateful that I went this way, alpha, and then embraced the hippie, because Dave Chappelle mentioned this on one of his talks. He was awarded the Mark Twain Prize for being a comedian, which is like the most prestigious thing you could do as a comedian. And he said that his mother taught him that in order to be a lamb, or what I would consider hippie, is that you have to know that you're a lion. Because this world, if you just walk around hippie-ish or lambish, will just eat you up. It's nature. And so I'm so grateful that I went that way, because there is a part of me that is assertive, that could be aggressive and stands up for what he wants and doing that. And also, too, being loving and caring without expectation and being really free of that, free to be that way, is really a courageous act. You need balls to really be kind and loving, especially in this world, because we see so much of it that the story is different, and it's so easy to become jaded or hear someone else's version of life and all that stuff, where it could really change your position on things. So I was alpha first, and then I learned to be more open and loving later.
That's such an accomplishment. I think for you, for me, for many people in our generation and in our line of work, it's so difficult to be writing your own universe, because your universe is so different. Like your existence, your experience is so different than that of your father, right? And mine is so different than that of my father. And so it's one of those things where it's like every day you're out there like completely changing what is possible. There was no lineage that led you this way. This is all you. And not only that, but you and I share that we're both Midwestern CrossFit gym owners, but I don't know if that matters. We're from the Midwest. And so you talk about spirituality, you talk about kindness, and it's a very like West Coast kind of vibe that you put off, right? And so like, how do you attribute yourself to being able to like, where did you find that, outside of Chicago?
Sure. So the first time that I was really put in this, I guess, this more self-actualization journey, or just being more embracing of it, is I signed up for the Barbell Shrug Mastermind. There was a Barbell Shrug Mastermind in 2015, 2016, and Mike Bledsoe of Barbell Shrug, or previous to Barbell Shrug, was a really big Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And when I went there, I met two gentlemen that really changed my mind about business and life. And those guys are Aaron Hind and Orion Mellahan. They are the founders of Life Aid, or Fit Aid, if some people know, but Life Aid is the overarching company and Fit Aid is just the beverage line. But I met them, and for the first time in my life, I saw people that were successful in business that were actually very kind and nurturing. Because in my growing up and in my reality, you can only imagine from like my father and people that were like my father from that neighborhood and stuff like that, I didn't see men who made a lot of money and were successful that were also very kind and thoughtful. I thought that if you were going to succeed in business, you did things that were possibly shady or mean or not considering other people. You just took. Mm-hmm. And I met those guys, and at the first Barbell Shrug Mastermind, and Ryan and I hit it off, and we wound up, and it was really funny because there was a lot of CrossFit people there, and a lot of CrossFit people find it taboo to like drink or be a little sociable. And I'm Italian American. Like if we can't sit down and have a glass of wine and just chat, like there's something really wrong with you in my book. You know what I mean? And so sure. Ryan, we were finishing up the welcoming party, and Orion's like, does anyone want to go to the bar and have a drink? And I was just like, yeah, no one else wanted to. And we wound up staying up to like 3 a.m, talking at this hotel bar, drinking glasses of wine, and just having this wonderful experience. And I learned so much from him at that point. It's just about, channeling an artistic, loving nature of myself. He was a DJ. He still like practiced music. And I was just like, you have fun. You go out and you dance. I'm like, and you make money. Cause I was always the guy that was like, man, if I go out and play like that, I'm not going to perform. And those guys completely, and I call them my godfathers or padrinos. My wife is Hispanic, so I call them my padrinos. And they just completely changed my trajectory on how I believe that I could show up in business and even as a man. And that was probably the biggest change and shift in my life. And once I knew that it was safe enough to me to embrace that side of myself, it was just full bore from there. Retreats, learning breathing, meditation. I mean, just everything, journaling, all the practices. I just really went nose deep in and went and really worked on a lot of stuff from my childhood, limiting beliefs, and just completely lost my mind to recreate it. That's the best way I could say it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And for the audio listeners that didn't see the video, I held up my Barbell Mastermind cup. I attended a couple of those as well. I think I was there maybe before you had joined.
Possibly.
But I'm very familiar with Orion and Aaron, and obviously Mike Bledsoe is a shared friend and an early mentor for me and a lot of those guys, which kind of brings me to another point. I, in my career, have a little bit diverged from CrossFit and really focused on just brick and mortar fitness. An organization that I was with was more broad. So I was working with, I've worked with Krav Magas and jiu-jitsu studios and, fit body boot camps and kind of on down the line, personal trainers, whatever. Some CrossFits, and I've always owned the CrossFit gym. But what I've found is CrossFit gym owners seem to evolve in very similar pathways. I could name 12 people who, and I'm not talking about bullshit hucksters that are scamming people trying to be coaches. I'm talking about real, authentic, evolved human beings that began their careers as either trainers or whatever, ended up maybe military, ended up owning CrossFit gyms, and then have kind of ascended above that to be this kind of lifestyle, almost shamanic type of people, people like Mike Bledsoe, people like yourself, people like Will Taylor, Will Hurst. These guys are all close friends of mine. Mm-hmm. And I can go on and on. Do you have any opinion on why sort of CrossFit, the company and the methodology, why that might lead to such a high percentage of folks that are kind of pursuing something greater and bigger and trying to share it with the world?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. And I have given this thought. So one, I feel like when anyone gets a really good handle on their physical self, like from training hard, nutrition and all that, it gives a sense of confidence or self-esteem to want to go further. Like there's a certain amount of not bravado, but you feel that you're up for the challenge. Like, what's the next challenge? I've already done a lot of things physically. Like, well, okay, well, what's the next thing? And a lot of that then turns into mental, right? Or spiritual or emotions, but it's having such a strong physical prowess and sense of self through demonstrating yourself physically, I think gives you the courage, or what some people may even think of as the permission to want to go deeper. And one of my favorite strength coaches, and then he's also probably looked at as a holistic coach now, is Paul Czech. And Paul Czech, in the late 80s and early 90s, he was a strength coach, but then he started really learning more about the mental and psycho-emotional things that really go into rehab and things like that. And, athletes. And there's such a strong mental component to health and how you even think about things. And there's a lot of great books that have come out, like Your Body Keeps the Score, and how so much more to what we are physically has to do with emotions and things like that. And I really believe that the people that have transcended through CrossFit have seen that CrossFit builds up a level of self-confidence and self-esteem to want to make people feel more encouraged to go deeper, but also too that there is some pitfalls in CrossFit where these other parts of people need to be embraced as well. And being more gentle sometimes is really important, not always having intensity and things of that nature. And I think the ones that have gone through CrossFit are the ones that have just been able to experience such a deep level of CrossFit, and now they see how wonderful it is, but also some gaps in it. And now they're trying to just fill all the gaps.
Yeah, just to react to that a little bit, like my take on it is, CrossFit is a methodology to get you fitter, right? But it's so much more than that, especially in a time, I think yoga fills this and jiu-jitsu sometimes fills this, where there's like, a lot of people in our generation don't have a shared ethic, whether that's church, whether that's even one particular black and white political, politics is very mixed at this point. And CrossFit and things like it seem to fill this like ethos, right? And it's, your shirt says passion is everything, but there's a phrase, everything is everything. And so as opposed to, let's say, a boot camp where it's like, we're going to get those buns and guns in shape. It's like CrossFit's like, I'm going to teach you how to walk like a grown up. I'm going to teach you how to eat, how to cook, how to, how to commune with people. We're having barbecues. We're going on trips. I mean, we're doing all this stuff. And to some extent, to shift gears a little bit back to Alpha Hippie is like the most kind and gentle and giving people that I know. Some of them are black belts in jiu-jitsu. And it's
for sure.
Right. So it's like, and I've heard you talk about jiu-jitsu. I'm not sure. Do you do jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I play jiu-jitsu. It's
yeah, me too, man. I just did this morning. And one of the things that I love about it is like those people that are like the real killers, you can feel a kindness in them where it's like, yeah, why don't you try that out? Oh, that didn't work, did it? All right, why don't you try that out? Oh, that didn't work, did it? And it's like, there's something to be said about that. Another person who I think of really highly is Tim Kennedy.
Yes.
And Tim Kennedy told me, I went for my bachelor party, my best friend Garnett and I went to his sheepdog response course. And
so
again,
cool.
there's the wolves, that's the bad people, there's the sheep, and then there's these sheepdogs. These are capable people that are out there and trained to protect the rest of the other people. And so it's a very similar idea. And the thing he told me that I'll never forget, he was like, man, when I first joined the teams, I was a hammer and everything was a nail. And he goes, now you got to really try to get me to kill you. And I was like, that's a pretty badass thing to say, but there's something to that. There's something to, making sure that you have been tested kind of through the crucible and like really wrung out and figured out like, what am I and what am I not? And where are my weaknesses and where are my strengths? And now you have this opportunity to be like, hey, things aren't going good for you right now. You're drunk, you're coming at me, you're doing this, or you're talking this way, or you're behaving like that. And have the, the power to be like, I'm going to give you kindness right now. I'm going to lead with kindness and love and maybe hold your wrist down, but like,
sure.
But, take care of you. I think there's so much to that. And for what it's worth, I think like just everything that you've done with particularly the Alpha Hippie has really kind of spoken to that, to me at least. So I guess thank you. I don't know where that goes.
No, I appreciate it, brother. Yeah. There's a certain, instead of repressing the darkness or shadows, it's good to understand them and honor them and know that part of you, because then you're more than likely able to embrace the light. And I think when people try to push down or repress, or, even society could denounce this like anger or anything like that inside of us, I really think that comes at a fault of not fully integrating with every part of you. And when, you know, you spoke about Tim Kennedy or like jujitsu black belts, I think what they've done is they've gone to such deep places with themselves emotionally, I mean, through physical rites of passage or tribulations, but what they've really gone through to push themselves that hard physically is a mental, spiritual, and emotional journey to get into that. And also to understand themselves in that point and not make it where their animal instincts or like the hammer controls them. They now are able to control the hammer. And, you know, anyone, you know, that practices jujitsu, it really, for me, it's learning how to respond to stress. Jiu-jitsu to me is how you respond to stress and how you even look at things and are able to find opportunity in the most darkest moments. Like, you know, like for instance, when someone's trying to choke you and you could put one finger in between their choke arm and you could get a little breath, you think that that's the freshest air of your life. And meanwhile, you're basically in someone's torture chamber. And I think that it helps us when you could get to those darker places and train yourself to be there, that you could see more light in life and you don't have to feel like you need to prove yourself so much. Or, you know, like what Tim Kennedy said, like he doesn't have to go so dark anymore to kill anyone, because he knows that if someone's acting like that, they're just probably not as trained and developed that, and they're acting out of an insecurity or something of that nature. It's not worth his time to go and really do that. They're not real threats.
So in day-to-day life, in practice, as we zoom out a little bit, you're in traffic, you're, you know, running late, and the lady behind the counter is just not giving you what you need. How do you fight back the wolf within and lead with love when you don't have time for the context? Because you present a certain way. You got a deep masculine voice. You're a big, strong guy. I have to live with this freaking face, man. I was telling my wife this morning, I was like, I'm so glad that my daughter smiles when she looks at me, because I look rough. Like,
dude, you got a killer mustache. I had a mustache for like 2 years. I love the mustache.
We just traded when I talked to you, you had one and I didn't. But either way, you know, so how do you go about, you know, when it's one-sided, when it's just you, man, and you're out there in the world and somebody does you wrong and you don't have time to sit them down and explain your ethos? Like, how do you live that virtuous life in the moment?
I tell myself that I'm safe a lot.
Yeah.
As funny as that sounds, is so anytime that I've realized this throughout the years, anytime that I could become aggressive or angry, it's really deep down me not feeling safe. And so my response is to get real big and intimidate or yell or try to impose myself. But meanwhile, it's all because deep down, my little boy inside of me doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And so I do my best in these moments and I feel them just like everyone. I got a 2.5-year-old, and, you know, God damn it, sometimes we just got to get in the car and, you know, it's not working, you know, all the things, you know, I'm a dad and I get it, you know, we got to leave somewhere. Or my son, you know, he's stealing all the kids' toys at the park and I'm like the embarrassed dad and all that stuff. But just, I try to tell myself that I'm okay and that I am safe. And to me, the only real fear that as humans we need to be in tune to is if we're physically about to get hurt, is the only time that you're really not safe. Everything else that causes aggression or anger is really a made up mental construct of not being safe. And so that's another reason I'm so big into jiu-jitsu, and I got my wife into jiu-jitsu, is when you know that you could take care of yourself physically, things like, you know, like money. A lot of people get worried about money. But the truth is if I put my hands around you and try to strangle you, you don't care how much you owe an American. Like, no one cares, right? It disappears all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Forget that it's April 1st and all the bills are going to come out that morning, right? And so I really think having such a strong sense of yourself physically then allows you to just have more space and more compassion in those moments, because you know that you're really safe. And that 5 minutes here or there, it's not going to end the world, and you're not really threatened. And so I just try to tell myself to breathe and that I'm safe and that this person is doing the best that they can. And it's not up to me to impose my will on them, because then I'm a bully. But that's what usually happens. If I get hijacked, my imposter turns into a bully. I think everyone should have a good idea of who their imposter is. So like when we come across fear, how do we respond? And just knowing that and becoming aware of that it will allow us to have the space to make better choices.
Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. I'm super excited that today's show is brought to you by the Global School of Entrepreneurship. Most practicing entrepreneurs cannot take 2 years away from their growing business to attend a full-time campus-based program or spend every weekend away from family and business for a couple of years. Finally, there's an accredited program specifically designed for you to work on and grow your business while completing your MBA. The GSE MBA complements the needs and schedules of someone actively engaged in an entrepreneurial venture while still covering the accredited curriculum expected from any MBA program. The Global School of Entrepreneurship offers a unique offering called the Mastermind to MBA program. It consists of 10 students who work together in a forum-style cohort and meet every other week for a year. The GSE MBA helps you develop skills in critical thinking and strategic planning. Students also develop competencies in leadership, decision-making, and communication with both employees as well as the important stakeholders in your business. You will be exposed to world-class academics and fascinating guest lecturers. You'll work on your business while working in your business. Students are guided by real-world entrepreneurs with decades of experience starting and scaling businesses just like yours. Best of all, I'm beyond proud to announce that the Global School of Entrepreneurship has agreed to offer one Spear and Clover listener a scholarship to join an upcoming Mastermind to MBA cohort. They are looking for someone just like you to bring a unique perspective to the program, and they are accepting applications right now. To learn more and to apply, simply go to www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Don't miss this opportunity to level yourself up and surround yourself with other like-minded entrepreneurs just like you. Once again, to apply for the GSE MBA Spear and Clover Scholarship, simply visit www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. That's very interesting. I've heard you speak about plant medicine.
Yeah.
Psychedelics, things like that, THC, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I am fascinated by this because I look around, I live in the Midwest, you lived in the Midwest growing up and coming through, and I talk to entrepreneurs, and on this show, this is the first time I've kind of talked about that on this show, but sure, this is something that's pretty alien to a lot of folks where we're from. And it's pretty normal to a lot of folks in Southern California and all
totally,
that, right?
bro. People are out here all day on this stuff.
So what role has plant medicine played in your development as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a man, as a father? Maybe we just start there.
Sure. So truth is, I smoked pot 2 times in high school and never did anything else until I was over 30.
Yeah.
Okay. And I believed that if you did other things like drugs or all that, that you were going to lose all your business and stuff like that. And then when I came out here to California, I learned a lot about psychedelics and things of that way. And I've had experiences of different kinds of psychedelics and all that different things. The thing for me is what psychedelics do is they anchor you to your truth. They get you to go to your truth and the deepest part of you that is what I would call like your godly self or a very free version of you. And what they do is they help you get there if you don't know how to get there naturally. And so you could use those medicines as like they show you the path to your inner God or inner freedom where you could really embody this. And then the goal is to try to live your life like you're on psychedelics because you've already been to the journey and they help you reflect on it. And I think a lot of people today are becoming almost like drug addicts and overusing them to an extent where because the opportunities there. And so for me, I would say about once a year, I have some sort of ceremony. And when I do it in a very ceremony way. I journal all morning. I make sure I'm fasted. I do it with a shaman or a guide that's going to really help me work through I have a lot of context when I go to the medicines. I don't just do the medicine because I want to get high. And anyone that's just trying to look into that area, it's about what area of your life, I would say, do you feel the most stuck at? Do you know where you're the most stuck at? And are you really ready to embrace the other side of it? And if you are, then psychedelics may be a great place for you. But if you're just looking to just rebel or get away from yourself, I really think that they're the worst thing for you. So for me, in my experiences, it's about once a year, and every year it's a little bit different. So for instance, I'll divulge a little information. So every year, I've been married 4 years, and every year with my wife, I surprise her with a wedding ceremony. And so she always doesn't know where the wedding ceremony is. And so this year, what I did was I have a friend of mine and who's also a DMT shaman. And so I requested that this year that my wife and I renew our vows through a DMT ceremony. And so we got together and we shared each other's vows. And then we had this amazing experience right next to each other, holding hands, where we dove into a psychedelic together. And it was a very beautiful, uniting experience. There were sound bowls. It was very, very nice. And so that's how I do psychedelics. I'm not the guy that's just eating them and trying to run around and see things. I do them with intention. And so for that was my ceremony last year, to really dive into that and reconnect with my wife and recommit and commit to newer things as we're growing as a couple. And so if you're up for it, I think they could be really helpful. I think it's really important to do around people that you trust and you feel safe with, and people that are really experienced with it, and not just people that overdo it and think they understand it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. First of all, the ceremony thing, I think, is really a beautiful thing. So kudos to you, bro. Man. You're a real romantic.
I am.
We got to hang out more.
I swear, my exterior completely changes people's perspective of me. I'm like, man, people don't know I'm a big, mushy, loving teddy bear.
Yeah, that's great, though. Yeah, I feel like the thing I always say is there's drugs that make you bigger. There's drugs that make you smaller and can hide you from the world, right? And then psychedelics seems to me to be best when it's just showing you the truth. What is it really? What are things that you maybe take for granted? What are things that maybe it's helped me in business? It's helped me very, very much in personal and internal and external relationships, things like that. But yeah, the folks that are not willing to address those questions certainly can misuse those substances, and have a blast, I'm sure. I don't know. I have no experience with that really.
You could still have a good time, but what I would say is that it's not transformative at that point.
Right. And I think to some extent, I think that, there's very few people, and I don't think this is anything. This is breath work. This is float tanks. This is yoga or sauna, sitting in a cold plunge bath. This is doing jujitsu and getting choked slow. There's some people that don't want to face, those things that they're weak at. And I think This maybe goes back to why CrossFitters are, have some kindred spirits when it comes to that kind of stuff. So,
Sure.
You're an entrepreneur. I don't want to call you a fitness entrepreneur because you've kind of moved into, a masculine or a lifestyle entrepreneur. Are you more entrepreneur or are you more the lifestyle?
Great question. I would say that I am artist first, entrepreneur second.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur enough to make sure that I know how to make money.
Yeah.
But I'm not such an entrepreneur after that. I love being an artist more of a connector guide, but I'm enough that I know ABCs of making money and owning a business and stuff like that. So I'm not a broke artist. I think that's the best way that I could really say who I really try to be in this world. I have enough entrepreneur astuteness, I guess you could say, that I could figure out how to accumulate wealth and money from what I do. But I am very pro about being a artist and guide first.
So talk to me a little bit about the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. I know that this is something that even just off recording, just talking to you, fatherhood has played such a meaningful experience for you in your life. So talk to me about where that's going and what folks can expect when they come to listen to that show.
Sure. I personally believe that every man's life is set up for them to be trained to be the best father that they could be. Mm-hmm. I really believe that deep wholeheartedly that is, I'm not trying to be too primal or prehistoric or, not modern, but I really believe that in a man's life, there are certain obstacles that are coming their way to shape them to be the men that they are and ultimately the fathers that they're going to be. And I'm very passionate. So my biggest trauma, I guess you could say, in my life was my relationship with my father, to really look at it. I have a wonderful relationship with him now, but growing up, it was very different for me. I had a father that was very aggressive and taught me to be very violent at a young age, like 5 years old. Everyone has to, just for talking, my father was arrested in August of 89. That was the next month I started kindergarten. So every memory I have of my childhood with my father is before kindergarten. And, being taught to fight people or beat people up and be really aggressive was the way my father taught me to be. And my father also was very verbally tough on me when he was away. And it obviously stemmed from him being insecure and sad that he was in prison, knowing that I was going to grow up without a father. And he really encouraged me removing my innocence and stepping into manhood very young, because I grew up, my mother went to work. As soon as my dad went to jail, I had a sister and my grandmother moved in to take care of us. And so I was the only boy in this household full of women. And my father was very big on me getting a job and working and taking on this more responsibilities and duties and things like that. And one of the things that I always struggled with was that my father didn't show up as great as I wish he did. And a lot of times my mother and other people would be like, oh, he didn't know any better. And to me, that's the ultimate bullshit fucking excuse. Okay. And I've always felt that way, that if you're going to be a father, it's not, oh, you didn't know any better. You need to scour the ends of the earth because you have a responsibility to be the best man that you could possibly be. And I'm so passionate about that from in my heart of what happened with my father and I. And then that catapulted me into feeling, just I'm going to be a father, then I have to scour the ends of the earth to make sure that this person is 1% better than I am before I die.
Yeah.
And that's my mission. And I think a lot of fathers become fathers, and because of their fathers or what they grew up in, we really don't get a manual on how to be a great dad. It's so interesting that in order to get a license, you have to take a test. You got to do all these things to take a test. But meanwhile, being a father is one of the most toughest, hardest jobs in the world. There's no qualifications for it. All you got to do is finish in a woman and hope that 9 months later she has a kid. Like it's so weird to me. You get what I mean? We have to go through all of these things, right? And these certain tests, but there's no test or something to be a father. And it's such an important job, like to really understand that. And I'm so passionate about that. I'm so passionate about how my son sees me love my wife.
Yeah.
So he knows that that's a part of being a man too, is that you love and embrace your wife. You don't just ignore her like she's she's the one that washes your underwear. Yeah. And just like everything like that. And I really wanted to grow and develop into being a great father. And I'm doing my very best every day to do that. And I'm very proud of how I've shown up. And I really trust that there's a lot of fathers out there that want to be doing better and showing up better. They just really don't know how. And if I could help one father show up better and show up better for their family, then I've done my part as a man before I die. And I'm very proud to live that purpose.
Yeah, I love that. I think one thing, it goes right back to what it's the same theme. Everything you're doing makes so much sense for you. I love it. But thanks, man. But it comes from, I look at my dad, we don't have the same story, but my dad was young. My mom was young. They were trying to do the best they could. And I think in a lot of ways, he showed up in the best way that he could. And so if he is listening to this, thank you.
Yeah.
But I think to some extent in business, in relationships, and certainly in parenting, if you act from a place of need and desperation, you're not going to get the best results. And so I think when you're able to act from a position of want and care and love, and it's because you've done the work necessary to put yourself in a position where you can be kind, where you can be thoughtful, where you have time to spend with your children or coach their teams or take them on trips or whatever it may be, right? And I think so much of that, it starts with you. I think a lot of times people have kids and then they stop caring about themselves. And it's like, oh, great. So they get to see your reflection is this frazzled person who's working their butt off and never has time. And sure, maybe you make an extra couple of bucks, but you're not able to show up as the person that maybe can be the leader and the mentor to that young child. By the way, I've got a 9-month-old baby named Lucy, and I'm doing the best I can, but I'm not ready to set up anybody's courses yet. From my perspective, it's in anything that we do, you always want to be able to act from a position of want, not need, right? I want to be there for my kid. It's not, I need to get over across town so I could do this and then make it to the second. And so it's almost like, we had somebody on, Dr. Mike Risher, who's a good friend. He works out of my gym. He's a chiropractor to the stars. He's amazing. You'd love him. But he said, it's incumbent upon us to be as successful as possible. And in the same way, it's incumbent upon us to be as successful as possible so that we can act for others from a position of want, from a position of care, from a position of love. And I think that what you're talking about and what you've spoken to this whole podcast it speaks to that a lot. So where does this go? You talk about a course. What would somebody get what type of course? Like what are things that people can learn from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast as well as the other stuff?
Yeah. So the program right now is laid out where we have 3 levels. The first is a foundations where we go over physical foundation, a mental foundation, a spiritual and emotional one. And it's a place where if someone really is new to self-development or is really just trying to learn how to do some basic foundational things to improve their life, it's a 4-week program. And it's 2 calls a week. It's very intensive as far as like that, even though it's 4 weeks and there's 2 calls a week. And it's really getting the basics down, just like in jujitsu, like you learn side control, you learn close guard. Like there's just certain things you need to know. And you don't need to worry about the fancy buggy choke that someone comes out with next week, but just like the basic stuff. And so that's what our first level is. And then after that, what we found is a lot of men want to progress with us, and we offer a level 2. And a level 2 is a bit more intensive where we actually go through limiting beliefs and we go through just your past, where you're really working through the things that are limiting you that you may not really be aware of, and how your mind could be a tool that is being really misused. I really tell people that our greatest technology is our mind and not anything else, because our mind has made every single technology possible. If I couldn't, Steve Jobs thought of the iPhone, and that's how it really started. And then everything that we get to see now is there. And there's so much about the mind that I think people misuse the technology, just like people overuse their phones. And so this second level is about getting into the mindset a little bit more and seeing what limiting beliefs you have around certain areas or things that may be holding you back. Or what I like to tell people is certain things get us from A to B, but that's usually not the same thing to get us from B to C. And that's what level 2 is. It's about removing of self-limiting beliefs. I call it de-weeding the garden. And then level 3 is momentum. Now that you've went through and you have a foundation and you remove limiting belief, this is where we get into more future. Like, what are you really trying to do in a legacy, a long-term format for your life? How would you like your ideal day to be? Have you set core values for yourself? And have you developed a system where you really are able to look at your values, see where you're living up to them, see where you need to get a little bit better at, create action plans around duty, responsibility, and commitments, which I think is the more masculine, assertive part of men, is that we thrive. The greater the man, the more duty, responsibility, and commitment he's able to fulfill on a day-to-day basis. That's really, to me, the outstanding, the thing that separates most men is, do you take care of what you're supposed to take care of? Do you honor your self commitments, and do you honor commitments to others? And whoever could do that on the best level with the most integrity is what I would measure a great man from a not so great man. And that's what momentum, the level 3 is there. And then we have alumni that we keep together every month. We have phone calls and we have events and things like that for them. And the program is absolutely, it's just an honor to coach it and teach it and create it, and just seeing all this stuff. And it's a mixture of things that I've learned in fitness, things that I've learned on my own. I have different certifications with cognitive behavioral therapy, that the self-limiting beliefs and things like that. I took a lot of just the CrossFit ambition, and just didn't take another level 1 or level 2. I went and learned some other things, and I've taken a lot of that into there and just really wanted to bring that together and bring out what we have right now. And I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, that's great. If you're listening to this and you're like, I don't have any limiting beliefs. Oh boy. We have some stuff to talk about? Yeah. What I will tell you is maybe certainly one of the most impactful changes in my life was when I started to look for limiting beliefs and knock them down. Because every time you do, there's 3 more behind it, right? Yes. It's so freeing, but it's such a foot on the gas pedal of your own development, of just looking for, what is it that I think is true that is holding me back? Now, you can phrase that a bunch of different ways. I love that you're helping people to do that. And I would bet that, like, just you doing this, I mean, the reason I own a CrossFit gym was because I wanted to be held accountable to being in shape, right? The reason I do this is because I want to be held accountable to talking to other great entrepreneurs and learning from them. I mean, it's kind of the thing we do, right? So I bet you're so much better of a father, of a husband, of a leader, because you're out there learning these things and trying to break these walls down with folks. What are you afraid of?
Great. What a great question. Probably what scares me the most is, what scares me the most at this point in my life? What I'm most concerned of right now is, on a bigger level, just how far that we've gotten from as people in these last years of just modern life. I'm very fearful of some of the impact of what we're seeing right now in this world, as far as, like, I don't know why, but I'm very concerned about this Russia-Ukraine thing. I think this is, and I've asked a bunch of people, and a lot of people just seem to be kind of aloof to it. But, if you study history, it's very similar how, I didn't go as fast, but it's very similar how Hitler took over Poland. And that was the very beginning of what people could call World War II. It was the big event. And so I'm very concerned about things like that. And I'm very concerned. What else am I really afraid of? I'm afraid of definitely being a hypocrite. And so, like you said about, doing these things and keeping you in line, it's definitely the greatest self-development thing that I've ever done, is becoming a coach, because it puts you in a position where, if you really want to be a great guide and coach, you get high on your own supply. You better be doing the things that you're telling people to be doing, and practices and things of that nature. And so I have a fear of not showing up in my full light. And that really guides me to being, my wife would probably call obsessive about showing up in certain great ways and all things like that. I tell people all the time, my poor wife has to put up with me doing all this stuff. You know what I mean? But she's a great sport and she loves it, and she supports me. But that's the biggest thing for me, is where we're going right now as a society. And also too, for me, just, I want to do my part. And that's part of it is from fear not, being alive in this earth and not making the best of this life for me. I get driven much from that. I mean, we all know that we're going to die. Obviously, the chances of us dying today aren't that great. Thank God for that. But at the same time, we are going to die and we have limited time on this earth. And to not spend time making it better is a time poorly spent, in my opinion.
Well, it doesn't seem like you're spending your time poorly from what I can tell. One thing that I would say, yeah, no problem, of course. One thing that I pulled out of there too is you talk about, you've learned these tools, and it oozes from everything we've talked about today, of like balance in yourself and your strength is mixed with philosophy, mixed with kindness, mixed with the ability to impose yourself if necessary, right? And I think one thing that I fear that I kind of heard a little bit in your answer is like, I could probably live here forever, and I'd like to make a bigger impact than that. And so it's like, well, when you can answer all the questions that are around you on a day-to-day basis, like, what do you do to agitate yourself to get to the next level, whatever that means for you? Because to me, you seem like a very actualized human being.
Thank you.
But you're not a billionaire, or even forget billionaire. No. You're not Tony Robbins, whatever the thing that you would think that you would, the biggest impact that you could see. Where do you look for inspiration to rise above? Because, from what I'm seeing, like I said, you're living such a, or at least trying, right, to live a very virtuous life. So where do you look within or without of yourself to kind of push growth?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So one of the things that I've learned and studied is around every 10 years, for most of us, we form a new identity, right? If I look at who I was I'm 38, I couldn't even wrap my head around who the 28-year-old Angelo was, right?
Right.
And so when I learned this, I started thinking about, all right, well, if this is what happens in people's development, and a lot of people say ninth is like the year of rebirth and things of that nature. When I went through that process that I mentioned earlier about me wanting to move into Alpha Hippie and move away from CrossFit, I wrote out who I was going to be in 2030. And what I really believe that we're shifting into right now is something that I call the mindful renaissance. Much like the Italian Renaissance in the 14 and 1500s, I really believe that the period we're moving into now will be known as the mindful renaissance. And my role in the mindful renaissance is that I will be the godfather of the mindful renaissance. I will be there to support and help and be the curator of these beautiful, mindful people to become more mindful, caring, and loving, and especially with men, because I'm very passionate about it. Not that I don't believe in working with women. I just know that I don't know what it's like to have a period. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. And so I don't try to teach women because I don't feel that I could be as 100% empathetic as I can be with a guy. And this idea of just bringing more mindful people into this world and helping people that way is my role. And everything that I do is centered around me stepping fully into this identity by 2030. And so it started in 2020. And from the smallest things, like I wear Vivo barefoot shoes now. I'm a big barefoot shoe person, but Vivos are like the only brand that I feel like is stylish. And I threw away and gave away everything about my clothing that didn't look like someone of that, and just creating all these voids and separation so I could really step into this identity. And my brain is just completely focused on stepping fully into the identity and helping as many people as I can become sort of satellites in what will be as the mindful renaissance. I work with business leaders and individuals, men in my group coaching program, and just and sharing things like this on podcasts and thoughts, and just the more people that I could help become satellites in that's my role as the godfather of this movement that I gave myself. And so that's how I keep myself focused. It's just that I'm playing a 10-year game, and doing that allows me to not sweat so much small stuff in the interim of all this. And my aim is so vast and so large that, little hiccups and things like that don't mess me up, because I know I'm playing for 10 years.
I love it. So I asked 2 questions to everybody that comes on the show.
Cool.
So I'm going to ask you those 2 questions now. The first question, which you've sort of touched on a little bit, is if you had access to unlimited capital to profitably grow your current business, what steps would you take?
I would hire a very, very good CMO, and I would put a lot of money in ad spend.
Yeah.
Those are probably, for me in business where I work the hardest, and I don't know about everyone else, but just for me, there's 3 areas in business: acquisition, fulfillment, and operations. I feel that acquisition, because of the way technology is moving, the way things are going, algorithms, advertising, and stuff like that, it's the part of the business that is the most changing and tweaking. And so if I had the money and capital, I would put somebody in there that would be fully focused on all the changes. And then I would have money to then take their expertise and capitalize on it with advertising, because that's also such a big part of what people know as propaganda. Is the reason that we get so jaded with certain thoughts and stuff like that is these people have enough money to put in front of everyone. And if I had enough money, I would put my own spin on that. So that's, for me, I would put it into acquisition of the business.
Well, especially because you're fulfillment, right? I mean, you and whoever you've chosen to bring on and train, like, there's so much scalability in this, glowing ember that you represent at the center of the business. So it's, I think that's brilliant. Second question is, if you had to stop all the businesses that you have been a part of or are a part of and start something totally new, what do you think that might be?
I would get in the products business for sure. And the reason I say that is I've had businesses in the past that were mostly service-based. And I will say, from a business owner perspective, I've had the hardest time trying to scale service business morally. And that's been the hardest thing for me is, if you have a service, man, like when we had 20 people in a CrossFit class, like, you can't say that my service was as great as when we had 5. It's just not, right? Like it gets certain diluted. And so I would move into products, and I personally would love to do, and what my biggest plan is, believe it or not, is to turn Alpha Hippie more into a lifestyle brand, more like a spiritual gangster. We sell like clothing and apparel. And I definitely think Alpha Hippie should be its own strand of marijuana. Who doesn't want to smoke Alpha Hippie weed, if you ask me? Why wouldn't you want to, right? And so definitely want to look into that more, is more in the products and stuff like that, because from a business aspect, you could scale product and not dilute quality. And I'm a big fan of focusing and learning more on e-commerce and products and stuff like that. That's definitely what I would do today, and figure out a way where I could reach the audience that way.
Angelo, you're a bad motherfucker. Thank you so much for coming on the show. One more time for everybody, how can we get a hold of you? Give us your social media, give us where we can find you, where we can listen to more from you.
Sure. Thank you for seeing me how I wish to be seen. I don't want to forget saying that. Alpha Hippie is I am Alpha Hippie. That's all Instagram, social media, and Brotherhood of Fatherhood. We have our podcast. We have our Instagram, brotherhoodoffatherhood.com. And if anyone has any questions, I'm just Angelo Sisco on Instagram. I'm not an incredible poster, but I'm a great DM checker. So if anyone has any questions or stuff like that, I probably won't get a bunch of posts out, during the week, but personally, I go on there just to read DMs and things like that. So please reach out, and I'm here to serve and support anyone with any questions. And if I could be a light in anyone's day, I'd love to be it.
Well, thanks a lot, brother. You certainly were a light in my day today. I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/Spear and Clover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.